Hello and welcome, friends, to Comedy Intercourse, Series 4, Episode...
Dos.
2, correct. So, welcome to the show. We've got some very special guests here today. It's going to be the same as ever. We've got some TV, we've got some film, we've got some stuff from the internet, and we've got some live sections as well. We've also got some very exciting interviews with both Alun, Cochrane and Barry Dodds, some northern comedians to talk to us about the scene and their particular performances, etc., on the last night of the House of Fun
at the library. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a very, very fun gig. Andre Vincent was there also. We're going to include his interview in the next episode. So we've got lots to get through. So should we crack on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's introduce our guests. Sitting next to me is fellow Comedy Stock member and quote-unquote Admiral of the Friendship, whatever that means.
You know what it means.
Pete Osbourne-Barker. Woo!
Hey!
Did I get that right? I have a thing with names. I always get them wrong.
Yeah,
Fine.
You spelt it wrong, but...
Sitting diagonally from me is a fellow Comedy Stock member and
Hempen revolutionary.
and once rapper Tim McConnell. Woo!
Hello,
Is that right, Tim? Is that your name?
Yeah. I mean, not my rapping name, but that.
Do you have an alias? What's your alias?
None of your business.
That's a really good
It's
alias.
all in the past. None of your business.
NOYB is called Noib.
For some reason, we never really got big. We were just hard to promote.
You were the second biggest in the industry.
Was it?
But no one could report
Was
on
it your
them because-
material or your style that didn't sort of propel you to the heights you wanted, Tim?
I think it was a poor choice of alias.
Oh, just really turned people off. No one wanted to buy the records. Forget it.
Well, I tried to ask him about, and he just shoved me away.
But he's
None of
clear
your
on,
business.
he's clear on his shortcomings, though, so there's maybe hope for the future, Tim.
I like it.
Tim's done a turn on the show already, on a time when you didn't want to do the show, Rich.
When was that? Every time last season.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, but I'm back and it's important. So yeah, let's just. Okay. So do you want to? Okay, so do you want to go into TV? Let's talk some TV.
Oh my.
Sound good, everyone?
Yeah, I mean...
All right.
A little more enthusiasm, please.
Yay, TV!
Are we playing the bumper?
I mean, I'm trying to, but I've forgotten which one the bumper is.
We don't have to play the bumper. I just thought it'd be nice if we play the bumper. That one? Yeah, try that one.
It's time for TV, I guess.
I am
Yeah, I think-
sorry again.
I think- no,
I was going to make some new ones today, but
No,
my
it
internet
worked,
broke.
didn't it? As long as it worked, that's fine.
Eventually.
Okay. Right, professionalism. Okay, let's just go in. Okay, let's go into TV. Right. The first thing I want to talk about is the BBC Three series Uncle, which is, I think it's on its 6th episode now. So we're going to talk about sort of general impressions, what we think of it, etc., etc. So for those of you who don't know, it's a sort of 6-part series starring Nick Helm. Got his name right this time. The last episode of the last season, I kept calling him Ed Helms, who, of course, is the star of The Hangover and The American Office as well. So that was embarrassing for everyone involved.
No, it was just embarrassing for you.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, it was
I think
just
it was
embarrassing.
just
for me.
primarily a Richard embarrassment there.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, he plays Andy, the uncle of a small child named Errol, and he's forced to look after Errol because his
mum doesn't love him.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, Errol has sort of parental issues, and Andy has to look after him, and they sort of bond. Andy learns how to become a proper adult, and Errol learns how to become a proper child. No, that's not how it works.
Does he learn to become a child? Because I thought he had that down.
He gets. Well, he is a child, but he sort of learns how to be more childlike.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I think is the point of it. And they get into all kinds of scrapes and hilarious stuff, and they sort of they learn something as well along the way. We also get exposed to a lot of Nick Helm's brilliant songs, which I'm a huge fan of, and I really enjoyed also on his pilot, which he had on BBC Three. No, he had on Comedy Feeds. I can't remember what channel it was on, which was
called Ed Helm's Heavy Entertainment.
Nick Helm's Heavy Entertainment, yeah, which I thought was fantastic actually. So general impressions of the show. What did we think, Chris? What did you think?
It was very nice when it wasn't shoving morals at us. I don't know whether it's just having watched too much Scrubs. Because it was always
You
on
wanted
E4.
no scrubs.
Less scrubbing.
I think you were trying to make it. Was that a TLC?
It was a TLC
yeah,
reference.
okay, yeah, right.
If we just...
Right.
I didn't get that. That's sort of over my head.
It doesn't. You don't have to, Chris.
Let me
and
talk you through it. A scrub is a guy that thinks he's fly and is also known as a buster. I mean, he's always talking about what he wants and just sits on his broke ass.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so thanks very much to P.O.B., the walking dictionary of early noughties pop songs that we all forgot about a very long time ago, but it seems that they haven't escaped you yet, which is nice to know.
I have been educated.
Okay, so...
But not by Uncle, not by its stupid...
You see, I thought it was quite good in that didn't happen too much. I found it... I'm actually going to disagree with Rich, because I liked it.
That was Chris actually said those things to
no,
me.
it was Rich.
I'm going to
Honest, Tim.
disagree with Rich.
But I haven't made an opinion yet.
But I felt that you described the show unfairly. I found it quite counter-tropic.
Oh.
Like,
Okay, explain.
They don't learn anything. The people don't change. They're still kind of the same people. That's what I felt. I felt that it was almost satirical of itself.
Well, I suppose it is a little irreverent, but then surely the way, especially in the first episode, where they get into a scrape at the football match and stuff, and then they come together and Andy says a few quite heartfelt things to Errol, and it sort of ties up nicely with him dropping him off back at his mum's and then leaving him. Do you not think
it does all tie a little bit Scrubs?
In the last 2 or 3 minutes, I do feel that they were going for the sort of warmedy kind of element over the sort of crazy sort of hijinks that marked the rest of the episode.
I'd say it's like 90% enjoyable misanthropy. Uncle, the titular, what's his called again?
Andy,
he's awful and he's selfish in all classic comedy style. Then at the end they get a bit scrubby.
Yeah,
they get a bit scrubby.
It's almost like a little piano and a voiceover.
Yeah.
It's like, today we learned that.
I guess, yeah. To an extent, I think it goes that way. But I think they improve the balance between that in the later episodes.
Yeah.
Episode 3, where Andy sort of gets a band together and then tries to perform at his ex-girlfriend's dad's club night to try and win her back. And he sort of does a 2-man band with Errol at the end. I kind of thought that, they get the balance a bit nicer, and as a whole, it was a sort of slicker kind of episode, especially in comparison to the first one. Excuse me. So, I think for me, it's actually hit quite a nice medium. He actually said in an interview that because it's Baby Cow and they did stuff like Gavin and Stacey, and I think they did Partridge as well, because I think that's Steve Coogan's company anyway. He wanted to do a comedy in that sort of vein. He wanted to make like something along the lines of what they've done, and he seems to be getting there. I think it's quite nice. I think the songs break it up nicely and make it somewhat original. You know, it's nice. It has his touch to it, which is good.
And Errol is fantastic.
Yeah, I thought I was going to hate him. Yeah. I can hunt it down for you if you want.
But yeah, he is really good, because again, I'm cynical about child actors, especially in comedy.
I think that's fair enough.
But he was really good and genuinely funny.
Pete, you haven't seen the show, but thoughts, impressions?
I mean, I'm also cynical of children. So.
But just in real life, not in any kind of...
What's their game?
So yeah, overall...
mainly.
Tag.
He's called the kid is called Elliot Spencer Gillett or Gillett.
Gillet.
And he's Gillett. And his previous best role was Holby City in 2010. Just as
Nice.
a character called
Decided
Sammy.
by whom?
He stepped up.
By me. It's that or the caterpillar and the fly. And I'm going to go for Holby because, god damn it, Holby's a good show. None of the doctors are real doctors, I think. I think the show is actually a show about people pretending to be doctors, because they don't seem to do that much.
Do you think after
accurate
about
medical
20
stuff.
seasons they just thought, let's go all meta, and then we can sort of cover the fact that we've been making a terrible show about like a medical drama for ages and ages
I
and
think they
ages.
stopped writing it. I think they just herd out-of-worked actors into the set, and then they just make the show happen. In the same way that, like, you watch an ants farm that you get on your desk and stuff, they just put the actors in.
I think that would produce more realistic dialogue.
You can't beat lines such as "Nurse, get me medicine, stat."
Yeah, we'd all miss that if they stopped making them. So let's stick with it.
This man looks ill. I think we should get him some medicine and possibly a bandage.
I think we started to segue quite nicely. I'll let our host decide the direction of this segue, but I think this is heading towards a segue.
Okay, so I wanted to sort of quickly relive a classic that I've just got into, far behind the times. I know everyone else has probably already seen it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, speaking of hospitals and horrible creatures. So, yeah, do you enjoy that, Tim? Yeah,
I love that segue. That
a lot
was
of
quality.
fun.
Richard Ross, I'm a newly born baby who has no taste in comedy. Could you tell me more about this show?
So,
Can you also change
Bearing
my
in
nappy?
mind, there is nothing more precious than a baby's smile. So let's get this right,
gonna
people.
We know what's at stake here.
So yeah, it's just a really nice kind of comedy with two layers where Matthew Holness plays a horror writer called Garth Marenghi, who writes terrible science fiction and horror books, and also stars in his own 1980s medical drama called Dark Place, which is about a hospital with all kinds of haunted goings-on and adventures that he gets into with his colleagues, who all have guns for some reason, which I really enjoy that. And but then
Holby City rules. Whatever the actors bring into the hospital is what the hospital contains.
But then all through the episode, you get it's interspersed with Garth Marenghi and his colleagues who made the program commenting on their own program and sort of looking back at it. It's like a retrospective documentary almost. And it's just really, really nice. You get it on two levels. It has all sorts of homages to just really bad sort of film mistakes and old films. And all of the episodes are sort of really tightly written and very enjoyable. It's got a really good cast. You've got Matthew Holness, Alice Lowe, Richard Iowadi, and Matt Berry sort of playing his sort of typically loud, bombastic, sort of generally sexist kind of characters that he plays. Yeah, I think the whole thing's just lovely. It's really, really nice. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring back something that would you say it's a sort of forgotten comedy in some ways or not? What do you think? Because
it's I mean, it's not like it's something that's ever repeated ever. It's from that age of when a lot of comedy was being churned out, and
It's up to us to find what's
Yeah.
good and tell you what is good.
I mean, it is all on 4OD now, you know.
yeah, so
Wait,
definitely
is Dark Place on 4OD?
yeah, it is. So
What?
take advantage of that. But I don't regret buying the DVD because the title menu is really, really nice.
And if that's not a sales.
I also like reading the back of DVDs.
Yeah,
so
what's
I,
the back of the DVD
so
like?
I loved. Oh, it was great. Because they don't actually, on the back of the DVD, they don't actually put any of the real actors' names on, so they don't have Matthew Holness. They have the names of the characters in Dark Place and also the fictional people who play them.
Because if there's one thing you love less or more than reading DVD backs, it's telling people who was in shows.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
like cast lists
Those are
and
your
backs
two
of
joys.
DVDs. And that's pretty much all I really take from comedy anymore.
Of
Just,
the handles from teacups as well. You
Yeah.
like them.
I do like them.
Not
but
the
that-
teacups themselves. Just
That's not
the-
comedy related. That's just how I like to live my life. So,
I just thought I'd, give them a bit of colour. A bit of background into the man, the mystery.
yeah, I think, and it was recently voted actually in the top 10 or maybe even top 5 Channel 4 comedies ever produced.
It's
well
pretty-
worth a watch.
It's pretty cool in that whoever's in it has went on pretty much to do great stuff.
Yeah,
I think
you get
if they do one of those comedy connection shows again, there's going to be a lot of them going through Dark
the
Place.
amount
I
of
think.
links to the Mighty Boosh as well are
Yeah.
sort of endless. You have Julian Barrett playing that priest, the resident priest in the hospital, who he's got like a sports car and stuff like that, and it's really nice. And Noel Fielding gets in an episode called Apes of Wrath, where the hospital gets infected with a disease that turns you into a monkey, and he plays the sort of monkey who's spreading the virus, and they have this chase scene on tricycles where they have to catch him and attack him and stuff. Yeah, so just thought I'd mention it, to be honest. Just wanted to.
It is a fantastic show.
Yeah.
It's one of the few shows that you can just, at any time, it's like, should we watch all of Dark Place? Yeah, I think that'd be a good plan.
Yeah.
We'll watch the whole of Dark Place.
It is the sort of thing you can really sort of whip through, because the episodes, obviously, they're still half an hour like any other, but they don't sort of, they're really, really quick
Yeah.
in a way. They're very tightly written.
And there's only 6 of them as well. It's only 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So
Unless you spend some time on the menu.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Which I like to.
bit of time gained for advert breaks. It works out.
So okay, so
What do you put your own adverts if you're watching the DVD? Do you just come out with a packet of crisps?
I imagine my own things. I have a little sort of
I take about 5 minutes after 15 minutes of the show. Make
Pause
a cup
the
of tea.
DVD.
Yeah,
go
just
over the main themes in my head. You know,
Imagine some adverts.
make
Yeah.
some tea and just
get influenced by the adverts. You know, make perhaps an impulse purchase, or at least consider one, and then
so
and then I get on with the next.
So if I may move on, another thing, another show I'd like to talk about just before the break is Inside Number 9, which is Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton's new comedy that they're bringing out, kind of based off Tales of the Unexpected. It's basically a series of one-off shows about different kind of mysteries with a big twist at the end.
I was like, how far are we going with this? Because the twists, I feel, are often...
What do you mean?
Well, are we allowed to say, oh, I liked the twist, or just refer to it as the twist?
Go for it, because I think people should watch it, and
So we should ruin it for them.
we should ruin it, yeah. And then we are superior. We have the superior knowledge here.
Oh, fine,
Yeah,
go on.
I see no need to ruin the twists. I think
Oh, first contentious issue.
Actually,
wouldn't
yeah,
say-
no, I'm going to go with Tim, actually. Yeah, let's not ruin the twist.
Message in with
Go,
your...
because we're recommending stuff, and if we're ruining it for everyone, then there's no point in recommending it. So yeah, let's not ruin it. So just say that you enjoyed the twist. But yeah, so it's 6 individual episodes. They don't follow on from another. They're not tied together. But there's 2 out at the moment, and they seem to be like a really nice study in just sort of playing around with different structures of the episodes and styles. So for example, the first episode is it takes place in one room, and all of the characters are sort of bottled into a wardrobe because they're playing sardines in an enormous mansion.
Yeah.
Which is coincidentally the house number is number 9. I think that's
It's a
the sort of
Really, really good writing idea, that, as well.
Yeah.
Like, just the tightness of the staging and stuff is
yeah.
brilliant.
So they really try and like confine themselves and throw up a lot of like parameters to write within. So all the characters get trapped in this game of sardines, and you sort of in the cupboard, and you sort of learn about all the connections between them, and then there's a sort of big twist at the end.
I was going to spoil the twist because I feel that the great joy of the show, while the twists are nice and they give it its sort of dark feel,
Yeah.
I feel the great joy of the show is primarily the interactions all the way up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the lovely sort of disquieting, dislocating dialogue that they have with each other.
Nice back and forths, yeah.
I I had problems with both episodes for different reasons. Like the first one, I felt either... Like both of them, I feel, with a bit of rewriting, they probably didn't need to be a full half an hour. It was like, they were both nice ideas.
Yeah.
But the first one, I felt, to make it fill the whole time, they introduced too many characters. I felt too many characters came in, and their opening line was sort of a ridiculous parody of the person they were.
Yeah.
To quickly establish who they were as quickly as possible.
So you'd have liked more interaction, maybe, or just
As in,
a shorter runtime.
Less characters, I think, and then go a bit more in depth with the characters they did have, because it was just sort of, oh, what's this person, what's their story? Oh, it turned out it didn't matter.
I felt like the way it sped up towards the end with more characters being introduced was quite nice, because it got really claustrophobic quickly. One character, who was it, Stinky John, was it?
Yeah.
Stinky John was referred to earlier, and they said, oh, who's he? And then not brought up, and then comes in and doesn't say all that much as well, but has a huge effect on the story, because they're all crammed in, and he starts panicking.
It was just nice. What's his Mark Wharton, is it, plays in?
I think so, yeah. He was in Nativity and La La Land.
I just haven't really seen him since My New Best Friend, which was my favourite programme.
Oh, right, okay.
Did you ever watch it?
I did not watch it.
The concept was great. It was basically a game show where he would just show up to someone in real life. They would have to convince all their friends that he was their best friend from like school or something, and he would just be as obnoxious as possible to their friends. And if they like spoilt it, they didn't get the money. It was excellent, and I thoroughly recommend watching it.
He seems to have kind of a legacy in like sort of obnoxious humour, because he does a very similar thing in his show La La Land, where he plays these different characters trying to make it in LA, and it's sort of like it's almost like a sort of prank show along the lines of the sort of stuff that Brass Eye did as well, where he's interacting with real members of the public and just annoying them immensely. But the first episode of Inside Number 9 has a really solid cast, plenty of characters. But I guess
it's quite an ensemble deal. I read a review that said it was a who's who, and a lot of the time I think reviewers just go, if there's enough famous people in a show, they go, it's a who's who, it's great, watch it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is
It's a fine smorgasbord of acting talent.
It's a guess who of it's a guess who of board game manufacturers. It's so the first episode was really nice. It's sort of all characters bottled into one room. The second episode has no dialogue at all, except for at the end, which is involved in the twist. And it's 2 burglars breaking into a rich man's house to steal a very expensive painting. So it's all very physical humour and timing, and there's lots of elements of farce in it. And the whole thing was, I thought, hugely enjoyable, so I'm just really excited to see what the third episode's going to be, because they're playing around with the format so much. Tim, what did you make of it?
I liked the first episode because there were so many jokes in it that were creeping jokes. Like
Yeah.
there was a joke with calling Rebecca and Rachel and getting them mixed up, and you didn't get that joke until halfway through the episode. You felt more like a fly on the wall because the jokes weren't pandered to you.
You had to work at it.
Yeah,
There's a lovely reference at the start as well where she smells some soap, and that doesn't pay off until the end.
Yeah.
You go, oh wow.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of very good writing in it.
Yeah. I really like the fact that, because of stuff like League of Gentlemen and Psychoville, like Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton can just play so many different characters themselves, and they get a nice balance because they had a very large cast in the first episode and a few different characters in the second one. So not only are they playing lots of different characters themselves, they're also getting a very wide range of other people in. So it's a nice balance. They said in an interview, actually, if they'd done it a few years ago, they would have tried to play all the characters themselves, and it would have got a bit sort of much. Maybe you would have seen too much of them. But
Just a quick look at who else is coming on. Julian Barrett's wife, Julia Davis, is in one episode.
Oh, great.
Lord Varys from Game of Thrones, Conleth Hill, is coming in, and he's
Wow.
quite good, yeah. Tamsin Grieg is in episode 4 as well. So they're continuing with the...
Nice. And they also have Una Chaplin, who in the second episode, who is actually Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter. So in the silent episode, which is really nice. And she was also in Game of Thrones, so they're doing pretty well.
A nice little symmetry there.
Yeah, very nice. I just can't wait for the next one. I mean, just whatever it's going to be, it's just a very exciting show. So, okay, so we're almost at half-time. Should we have a little bit of music to
Well, if you really want it.
take our minds off all the comedy?
Do I get a say in this? Or
I'm just sick of looking and talking
Pete.
to you all.
You are the guest. You would pay to remember it.
Oh yeah, and get off your phone. So unprofessional.
Stop barbecuing.
So this is. So this
He's
is.
brought in a portable barbecue.
Okay, this
Doesn't even have
right,
things
just-
to cook on
just-
it.
It
Right,
stinks.
just okay. We're gonna go. This is Nat King Cole, and you're nobody till somebody loves you.
You're nobody till somebody loves you. You're nobody till somebody cares. You may be king, you may possess the world and its gold, but gold won't bring you happiness when you're growing old. The world still is the same, you'll never change it. As sure as the star shines above, you're nobody till somebody loves you. So find yourself somebody to love. The world still is the same, you never change it. As sure as the star shines above, you're nobody till somebody loves you. So find yourself somebody.
Nat King Cole, you're nobody till somebody loves you. Infinitely better than the Dean Martin version, I find. But did you enjoy it, guys?
Yeah, it was very pleasant.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was all getting a bit tense. I was getting a bit sick of all three. It's just settled things down nicely.
We thought it out now.
And we've decided that I'm the special guest.
Does that mean I'm the new host? But I win this round.
No, I've conglomerated both host positions into my own host, and I'm called the overhost.
The overhost. So, okay, so do you want to... we're going to talk some film for a little bit. Chris and I have seen... What we normally like to do is on the show, we like to watch two very bad films and then sort of laugh at them for their unintentional comedy value. It's cruel, but we like it. So, should we go to the film bumper, please?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Christopher?
I don't know how to say this, but it's the film section.
There you go.
It's 30 seconds, in it, at the end of the day, so I'm more than happy just to let that run. Okay, so Chris, you've watched a film called Meet Joe Black. Would you like to tell us about that for a little bit?
Oh, right. So this is going to be fairly short because I couldn't go through the whole thing because it was too painful. But if you watch any Brad Pitt movie, what I want you to do is look upon his lips, okay? Now, I know you're thinking, his eyes, such an attractive part of him. No, his lips, because somehow they're purple. He has purple lip. I don't know whether it's like makeup people doing something to him or like hypothermia setting in from just standing around in sets forever. Maybe it's Angie, and she's just been putting ice packs in his clothes without him noticing. But he's got these really eerie purple lips, which oddly is fitting because he plays the Spectre of Death.
Are you sure it wasn't just this film?
It's no. It happens in Troy as well.
Okay.
It's really eerie.
What's
in Troy.
Meet Joe Black about? Please explain.
Brad
You talk about anything else.
Brad Pitt and his purple lips are death.
Okay.
Given the imaginative name of Joe Black by Anthony Hopkins, who bargains for a bit extra time to... I don't know, I missed that part of the film. Possibly bake some biscuits or something. There's a lot of standing
They're
around...
almost done.
There's a lot of standing around in like suits and business speak, and it's... and then he has this really creepy, controlling relationship with his daughters. There's a lovely scene in which one of his daughters comes up to Anthony and says, "Oh, I know I'm not your favourite, but I'm okay with that." And he just goes and ignores her. He just ignores her and says, "I love you, now run along." And that's it. And they don't ever do anything. But I think the film is particularly terrible because it lasts so long. Like, the idea of the film is that it escapes expiring. It's like, you know, they're trying to escape from death and parting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they embody this by just having the ending just go on.
So ironically making you wish for the sweet release.
Oh yes. And they're gonna look at some fireworks now, and there's a party, and they're gonna talk for another 10 minutes.
When did it come out? And was it like a big budget thing?
Yeah, it was quite a big budget thing, or possibly it was a star show.
Because normally the ones we review are like actually quite low budget, and they tend to make like a lot of technical errors that are quite funny. Like they often get like the sound wrong, like if a character's speaking away from camera and stuff like that. So it was like genuinely they made an effort of it, but it was just absolutely terrible.
They didn't really realise. I think the best bit, and this is the final complaint I have of it, is: are you aware of the scene in Airplane where the lady talks jive to the two black fellas, and it's quite ridiculous because it's the wrong voice coming out of someone, and they sort of deal with it normally. There's an extended scene in which Brad Pitt talks jive to a dying old lady. And
okay,
and it just doesn't. It really doesn't feel right, or especially with his weird purple lips, lit by unflattering hospital lights, and also the fact that the lady in question, multiple times throughout the conversation, just asks to die. She's just asking to die, and
the embodiment of the audience.
It's the most believable acting in the whole film as well. She's just going, "Stop it, I want to be let go." "Why do you want to be let go? I'm Brad Pitt. Hoody doody doody doo."
Is he Irish?
I don't know what he was doing.
I'm talking jive.
And yeah, that was it, really.
Okay, so that didn't sound great. What would you give it on the negative scale? What
4.
would you give it? -4.
Actually, no. In terms of negativity, it's like -2. If it was in positive,
So
it'd
it's
be
just it's just like a film that's not like so great because it's really bad, like Fire, Ice, and Dynamite, for example.
It's just a failure.
It's just
So
that's
the worst
disappointing.
yeah, like you want one that is either so bad that it's good, or
Well,
or just good.
I think the one I watched, it was also partly for my dissertation research, but it was.
Boo, nerd, boo.
Yeah, I actually worked quite hard, Chris. So just shut up. It was, it was basically a 2-part mini-series called that came out in 1994 called World War II: When Lions Roared. And,
Is those the two main themes?
yes, yeah, pretty much. If
They
by
were
lions.
They were awfully quiet in the interwar years, and people were going, "Where are these lions gone?" I don't know. And then World War II, and they go,
Well, you know, people go on about how bees are dying out now. I wondered whether lions sort of suffered during the war period.
It makes sense if by World War II you mean the Second World War, which it does, and if by lions roared you mean the leaders of the belligerent nations, and by roared you mean just talk to each other
I did not
sternly.
mean those two things.
Oh well, never mind then.
That sounded awfully prepared.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't.
You could say that in this film, the lions bored.
So basically, but then this is the best bit, right? This is the best bit. Okay, so it's about the negotiations between FDR, Churchill, and Stalin, and they're played by John Lithgow plays FDR of Third Rock from the Sun and Shrek 1 fame. I'm sure he's done other stuff, but that's all I remember him from. Okay, so FDR is John Lithgow. Bob Hoskins is Winston Churchill. Right, that's not even the best one.
There
right?
is
Bob,
no sensible casting
yeah,
for Winston
Bob
Churchill.
Hoskins of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I also saw him in a 1980s production of Othello, which was really good, with Anthony Hopkins actually, which is strange. He's Winston Churchill. He's just like one of the worst Churchill accents I've ever heard, and he just sort of like toddles around the screen, just getting angry at people. Right, but Joseph Stalin is played by Michael Caine. Amazing, and it got 6 Emmy nominations,
He's
and
a very
he's the one.
versatile actor.
He's the one who got the Emmy nomination. That's the thing.
I mean,
Like, it's phenomenal. It's got him with the moustache and the right hair and everything, and he does the Russian accent as well. Like, why aren't the Allies preparing for D-Day and stuff like that? And it's just amazing to watch him do this. Strangely enough, he actually emerges as probably the best one out of the 3.
He's a great actor.
well, Tim, you're a damn commie.
Yep.
How do you feel about this? Would you have chosen Michael Caine?
By damn, do you mean communist?
Yeah,
Because I didn't actually.
I'd have elected.
taking ferry.
I'd have elected Michael Caine as chairman.
That's not how it works. They just take power. Has no one told you this?
Well, I'd have then been purged, I imagine, possibly for not being communist.
Oh,
I can imagine him as a Stalin, actually.
Really?
Not playing Stalin, but as a dictatorial ruler of a Soviet country. I can imagine Michael Caine.
But then he goes on a very heartwarming journey, and by the end of it, he turns everything round.
so that's the red approval for Michael Caine Stalin. You weren't expecting that. You were like, oh, this is going to be inherently ridiculous. Take that, film. Ha!
You were only supposed to blow the bloody West up. That sounded.
was that so soft?
That sounded like the guitarist from Spinal Tap, and not Michael Caine. Just never mind. Yeah. So it was just mad. Basically, they used actual archive footage from World War II, but then what they do is they badly green screen it with them communicating, like, oh yeah, it's all like they're all orchestrating the war and stuff, and it was just so badly done. And then sometimes they do that thing, you know, like in old films where they're having a phone call and they cut the screen in half or in thirds, and they sort of talk to each other and go, like, they did it on that. So you had Churchill
In the
talk.
bath.
Yeah, talking to FDR, talking to Stalin, but none of them were on the phone. It was sort of...
Oh, like that scene in Mean Girls where all the girls are talking to each other.
No, but they're on the phone.
Was Michael Caine in Mean Girls?
Yeah.
I don't think he was.
He can play anything. He was the mean girl.
He was Lindsay
But
Lohan.
anyway, so it was just
even
mad,
know it?
but thoroughly enjoyable. But it's in terms of historical education, it's got a value of about 0. But on the negative scale, I'm going to give it a -7 because it was thoroughly enjoyable. So
It sounds a -7.
I mean, to be honest, I quite want to watch this now.
Yeah,
it's great.
it's
So
drawn
everyone
me
just
in.
everyone just come around and we'll have a
can
viewing.
it can only be better than Churchill the Hollywood Years.
I haven't watched that yet, but I'm really excited about that. So maybe we could do that later. Okay, so that's the film segment over with. So should we go through to our interviews with Barry Dodds, who was the MC of the last night of House of Fun at the Library Pub, and Alun Cochrane, who was one of the headliners. So should we go to our interview with Barry first? We just wanted to ask you, with the sort of recent difficulties that the northern scene especially is having at the moment, with like the weekend clubs closing down and stuff. For example, the Jongleurs in Leeds, I think, closed down recently and stuff like that. Are you finding that that's affecting like your ability to perform around here, or is it not really affecting you much?
I mean, there's still Highlight in town, which is quite an established club. That used to be Jongleurs before there was like a split, and a company took over what was Jongleurs and made it into Highlight. Then Highlight reopened in Oceana, and it didn't work, probably because Oceana isn't the right place for comedy, and it's full of drunk stags and hens, and it just wasn't fun. So yeah, it's a bit of a shame. It means that there's a bit less work, but I think that the good gigs are thriving. It's generally like the sort of bad ones that aren't. I say it on the last night of this gig. This isn't closing because it's a bad gig. This is the last gig here, but it's actually moving down the road to the Oak. Yeah. So just a different room, same comedy club though.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe a good thing then ultimately if some of these nights that aren't sort of working out are just being shedded, and then you're just left with
kind of yeah. It means that the nice gigs are left, and like yeah, basically. I mean, there's a guy called Toby Jones runs a lot around here. He runs this gig, for example, and there's a gig in town called the Hi-Fi, which is just always packed, and it's a brilliant gig. It's easily one of the best in the country. So again, it's just a good example of a good one doing well. So.
How do you think the scene sort of compares to when you first started out in the north specifically? Like how do you the differences?
Well, I started in Newcastle, and there's like a few sort of gigs knocking around there now. More so than when I started. It's kind of growing. Like stand-up it sort of became a lot bigger with the likes of Michael McIntyre's Comedy Roadshow and Live at the Apollo, where it got a lot of people more interested in stand-up. And of course it made superstars out of comedians who then fill arenas. But sometimes that's a detriment to the sort of grassroots clubs, because everyone's spending money on a ticket to go and watch John Bishop from half a mile away and not going into the smaller gigs. But I think there's certainly more gigs around than there used to be. So, and audiences are more comedy savvy, I think, now as well. So I think people know what they're going to get.
And you'd personally attribute that to sort of what's been on TV generally, or
kind of, yeah. I think it's just the old myths sort of disappearing. Like people wouldn't know what they were going to get from a sort of comedy club, whereas now I think people are used to think it was your sort of, I don't know, almost working men's sort of comics. I think people now have a better idea of what they're going to see, and it's more appealing to them than maybe they thought.
So, in terms of audiences on the circuit, like, do you sort of, for example, if you're in a gig, primarily populated with students, or if you go to another gig, like maybe further into the city or something like that, and it's more kind of businessmen, that sort of thing, what kind of differences do you perceive between the audiences, if any? I mean, you might know.
I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between them. I think what I've always found is that sometimes like a gig like we're at now, where it's going to be a lot of students, sometimes it can be a little bit wary and a bit kind of reserved and a little bit held back. Certainly in the first section of the show here, I've always found that. But after a couple of drinks, they'll sort of relax into it and realise that there's nothing to be scared of, and like nobody's, even though there might be a bit of banter mucking about, nothing nasty's going to happen. I think the audiences are pretty much the same apart from that, really. Yeah, maybe there's a difference in sort of Friday and Saturday nights at some venues that encourage sort of stags and hens. That's when things become difficult, because it's alcohol-fueled noise, really.
And just one final one. Sort of in terms of your own act, would you say you have any kind of major influences, or even just sort of, I don't know, maybe more sort of just maybe acts that have influenced you indirectly, any in particular at all?
It's hard to tell really, because the acts that I like are sort of nothing like I would do on stage. Like I'd say my favourite comics, I'm a big fan of Frankie Boyle. I think Frankie's excellent. I know he's got his detractors, and yes, he does go very near the knuckle, but I'm a big fan of what he does. But again, it's not it's not at all similar to what I do. Kevin Bridges, I think, is another brilliant comic, and Jim Jeffries is another comic I've always looked up to. In terms of them, how have they influenced me? It's hard to tell really, because I sort of tell stories really. It's not sort of like gags like Frankie Boyle does. So it's hard to tell really. Sorry, that's a rubbish answer.
No, it was really good.
So that was Barry Dodds on his personal influences, his view of the scene, and the scene in the North particularly, which I thought was very interesting and very insightful. So we've got another interview for you, which is with Perrier nominee Alun Cochrane. We were really excited to interview him as well, and he gives us a little bit of information on where he thinks the scene's going at the moment, what it was like when he was starting out, and just his sort of general views on all things comedy at the moment. So let's give it a play. So to start off, I mean, you're from Yorkshire yourself, correct?
Kind of, yeah. I'm Scottish underneath, but I grew up I grew up in Mirfield in West Yorkshire, so not far from here, really.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think the differences are between, like, the scene in sort of Yorkshire and the North in general, and when you started out in comedy, and what it's like now? Like, what do you think the major changes have been, sort of trends? Or?
I think the major change has been that everybody notices comedy, whereas kind of 20 years ago, when I was leaving school and was really into comedy and interested in it, there were no gigs in town centres, and now it sort of feels like we've gone right through that and we're on the other side of it. It feels like there were so many comedy clubs in the country 5, 6, 7 years ago that now it's sort of gone through that phase, and now you hear stories about comedy clubs closing, and everybody that used to be in those comedy clubs is now in arenas. Not quite everybody, but it feels like, you know, there are points where the Comedy Store had a bill on that now you could look back 6, 7 years and all of those acts are in arenas now. You know, it's mad really. But I suppose the flip side of that is that those big arena gigs might be sucking audiences out of comedy clubs. But I think it'll ebb and flow. It always does, doesn't it? I think.
So we could potentially be at the sort of, we might have just passed the peak of a sort of, in terms of the popularity of comedy, in terms of small and medium-sized gigs, we might have just, you know, passed a peak there if these arena sort of tours are coming in.
I think possibly, yeah. But then, you know, sometimes you read about these old mainstream guys, and I read an article about, I think it was Jimmy Cricket or somebody like that lived in the Northwest, and it might have been Bernard Manning even. It was someone that, from where they lived in the Northwest in the 70s, they lived near something like, I think they lived within 20 miles of 500 working men's clubs or something, and they were just playing them all, like sometimes doing 5 a night. We don't really do that in the North. I've done 5 in a night in London, but you don't get loads of, you know, doing the, like back then they would have done an afternoon gig, a tea time gig, an evening gig, and another one in Liverpool, and it was just all these fat guys sitting in Jaguars driving around the Northwest. But you know, I think I'd like to get really uppity, and sometimes you hear comics moaning in dressing rooms going, oh, there's no work about, and so-and-so's reduced their weekend to just a Saturday, and do you remember when there used to be Thursdays at the Glee, and you know, and I think it will shrink and contract and then it'll grow again. But much though I'm worried, I've always worried because I'm a jester, so like, you know, I haven't got a fallback plan, and I think the way I look at it, all right, I need to pay my house off, but there are modern jobs that I would be really worried about if I had those jobs, whereas this job's always existed in one form or another. There's always been jesters and prostitutes. That's my my returning thing, and so I suppose if this really goes belly up, I've still got prostitution to turn to, but I'm not sure I'll do quite as well at that.
Nice to know. So it could just be the case, I suppose, that the sort of structure of comedy is changing rather than sort of any major kind of popularity shift, or perhaps because we've, like you said, we've gone from these sort of working men's clubs operating frequently in the weekdays and weekends to a different kind of setup with the arenas, but then also still some medium and small sized gigs such as this one.
I think the interesting thing about it is how the internet revolution still really feeds into people going out and seeing the person in the flesh in front of them. So, it's all very well, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man here, but it's all very well doing sketches on a camcorder in your bedroom and putting them on YouTube and becoming a sensation, but then there's still a point where you need to do an equivalent of this as your apprenticeship, where you end up in rooms above pubs playing to 100 students, or a mixture of the Leeds locals. And hopefully all this time that I've chugged around the circuit isn't entirely wasted. I feel like I've sort of learnt a trade, but it's just one that the skills for which are very quick to just completely desert me if I don't keep my eye on them.
So, speaking of audiences, actually, do you perceive any major differences between sort of like different audience groups? For example, you just mentioned playing to 100 students, or playing to maybe some businessmen or like locals of an area. Like, do you perceive any like major differences, or do you just think it's much of a muchness?
I do see some differences, but it's partly depending on what environment the booking is. Like you said, playing businessmen, I do quite a lot of business corporate-y gigs, and in those I would say you have a little bit less freedom for the gig to go up and down, and a bit less freedom to be really rude, unless you're extremely famous, in which case they're just happy you're there and you can be profoundly unpleasant but get paid 10 times what I do. But I would pick from a shallower pool of material on those gigs, partly because I used to do a thing about eating crisps in the pub where you rip the crisp bag and all share them, and I tried it at a couple of corporate events, and it turns out people who drive Bentleys and have their own hedge funds, they don't really do that in pubs with their mates. So that the laughter of recognition was sadly lacking on those bits. When you're in front of 1,000 people in the Grosvenor Hotel on Park Lane, you do choose the stuff that might go best with those people. And similarly, there's a sort of a feeling that if you do stuff about your kids or your relationship in student gigs, particularly like freshers' balls or something like that, you're kind of on a hide into nothing. But there's always exceptions, because I remember being a teenager and really loving a bit that Lee Evans did, where he talked about letting his daughter have a pee by the side of a motorway, and I still remember it now.
Is that where he was swearing at the traffic?
Yeah, and I thought it was great, and I had no kids, but I just think if it's funny, people don't really care. And I did a gig the other night where I'd been talking about my kids for a while, and I said, has anybody here got kids? And there was nobody in the room, and I said, I think I may have misjudged this gig somewhat, but it wasn't a problem because they'd already been laughing at it. And I just think if you don't have to have lived through everything to actually get it, do you? You don't have to have killed someone to enjoy Hamlet. That's my feeling.
So that was Alun Cochrane on the scene, what it was like when he started out, that sort of thing, which was very enjoyable. So our next interviews will be with on the next show it'll be with Andre Vincent, who we interviewed at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a longer interview, so that'll be good. And we've also got the next episode with Justin Morehouse of Phoenix Nights fame. That'll be very enjoyable.
That was the horn explosion.
Okay.
Rich wanted to hear the horn explosion. We looked through the sound
Yeah, not
effects.
on air though. I just wanted to hear it in my own time, but that's okay. A few quick plugs before we sign off. Shut up, Pete. We've got Pigeonhole in March with Phil Kay, which we're really excited about. Another Perrier nominee, which we're really looking forward to. We have Hecklers Will Be Shot on the 23rd of February, which is in aid of cancer research. That's a nice charity gig that Hugh and I are performing at, actually, Chris. So little plug for ourselves. What do you mean, are we? Yes, we are.
I'm not sure. Are you on, Pete?
No.
Are you on, Tim?
No.
I might not be on then.
I think. Well, why do you have to? Never mind.
I'm just going with law of
on.
averages.
You are on. You're just being stupid
If
again.
enough people I know are on, I'm probably on. That's how I do it.
There's House of Fun next Thursday at the original Oak because it's moving back to its original venue, which will be very exciting as well. So that's with Justin Morehouse and another headliner whose name escapes me, which I'm very embarrassed about. Should have done my research. And we've also got the Little Leeds Fringe, which is in late March. It'll be it's here on campus at Stage at 1, which will be very exciting, where our very own Comedy Society and the Leeds Tea Lights will be doing some sketch stuff for us.
We're going to be fighting.
Yeah,
So we're going to be literally fighting.
The Tea Light's very much in a supporting role there, I think.
We do have the weight of numbers.
It will be
So yeah, it's very enjoyable too. So I'd like to thank both of our guests, Tim McConnell and Pete Osbourne-Barker, for coming along. Thank you. And I would say thank you to you, Chris, but I don't think you've done enough to merit me saying that.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for this horn explosion.
And with that, I think we'll sign off, guys. So thanks for listening. See you another time. Bye, everyone.